Hi everyone, this is Dan. I am a YouTuber from Poland who used to live in Taiwan for 9 years. Today I'm gonna talk to you about the massive protests that are happening in Inner Mongolia region of China right now, or Southern Mongolia, how some of the Mongolians prefer to call this region. The CCP, which is the Communist Party of China, has launched a new policy in Inner Mongolia to gradually change the language of instruction at schools from Mongolian to Mandarin Chinese. In the past few days, in many cities of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, like Dongliao, Ordos, and other places, tens of thousands of students and parents went out on the streets to protest. They opposed the new Chinese language education policy of the CCP, which targets the education in Mongolian language of the ethnic Mongolians. The students, teachers, parents are demanding the government to withdraw the new policy. And they even launched an indefinite strike in protest. Many protesters were injured and some were arrested. The CCP also blocked ethnic Mongolians' WeChat groups. Local police beat innocent Mongolian people on streets. The government officials conducted a large-scale inspection of Mongolian language books, and sales of the Mongolian language books were put on hold. In the city of Dongliao, there even is a school that prevents children from leaving. So the students are collectively locked at the school and their parents are not allowed to take them home. Many bad things are going on there right now. A protesting mother was arrested and her child jumped off the building and died. In fact, in July this year, the news came out that the Chinese government intends to strengthen the Chinese teaching curriculum. It was probably the last drop for the ethnic Mongolians suffering from oppressive policies. On August 26th, the government officially issued the document, stating that starting from this September, Inner Mongolia Department of Education would have to change the textbooks from the native language of Southern Mongolia to the textbooks in Chinese. In addition, in the next 2 years, the political science and history classes will be gradually changed to Chinese language schooling, which simply is forcing the Mongolians to go out on the streets to protest. Right now, Southern Mongolia is implementing which is called Type 1 bilingual education. Mongolian children only start to learn Chinese at the 3rd grade of elementary school, and school teachers are supposed to teach them Chinese in their native Mongolian language. Children who got their education under Type 1 bilingual system are able to communicate freely both in Chinese and Mongolian, and for them it becomes easier to learn other languages in future, such as English, Japanese or German. But right now the CCP is trying to enforce its Type 2 language training system. Force the Mongolian children to use the same Chinese textbooks as the rest of China. Force the teachers to teach in Mandarin instead of Mongolian. Of course it makes teachers and parents worry, as the CCP is adding political science, history and some other subjects to the Mandarin curriculum in Inner Mongolian schools. It might cause some additional problems for the Mongolian children during exams. In July, Professor Tegusbayar, a Mongolian expert from Inner Mongolia University, published an article in Mongolian Culture Weekly. The article is written from the perspective of language learning. Professor Tegusbayar wrote that compulsory adding of Chinese language learning hours in the 1st grade of elementary school would weaken Mongolian mother tongue education, and it would be very difficult to achieve the goal which was the original intention of the bilingual education. The students coming out of this system wouldn't be bilingual anymore, but rather flawed monolingual, or even half-lingual, not proficient enough in both languages. At the same time, the Mongolian language education would be weakened, and it violates the law that guarantees equality of minority languages. His article was removed from the internet later. You'll see error 404 if you try to search for it in China. Nowadays, the percentage of ethnic Mongolian people in Southern Mongolia is only 20%. What does it mean? It simply means that Han majority and the CCP are taking away the land and resources that originally belonged to the Mongolian people, and right now they want to wipe out their writing system, language and culture. Mongolian script is a world-class cultural heritage, being the only top-to-bottom writing system. And now even Mongolia doesn't use the script. They switched to the Cyrillic script under the influence from the Soviets. So the traditional Mongolian script is a very precious cultural asset. Since the time when the Chinese Communist Party took power, the brutality towards Mongolian and plundering of Southern Mongolia has never stopped. 9 years ago, in 2011, there was a large-scale protest, the so-called Mergen incident. On May 11, 2011, Mongolian herder Mergen called in 30 villages to go out and protest. The reason to protest was the development of coal mines since 2005. Pastures had been seriously damaged. Desertification process was almost irreversible, and there were much fewer rainfalls at the time. The basic living conditions of the herdsmen have become even harsher, but the local government has never responded or dealt with it in any way. In the end, the Mongolian young man, Mergen, was hit by a coal truck that was passing by not far from his home. He was dragged for 150 meters, Of course he didn't survive. The drivers Li Lingdong and Lu Xiangdong drove away. The murder caused deep grievances amongst Mongolians, finally leading to protests involving thousands of students taking the streets. It was the largest demonstration in the past 30 years. On May 25th, more than 2,000 Mongolian students and herders from the Shilingol Mongolian Middle School, the Municipal Mongolian Middle School, and the Comprehensive High School of Shilingol took part in the demonstration, demanding punishment of the perpetrators that killed Mergen. Thousands of students and herders also launched protests to protect the grassland and in support of the rights of the herders. At the same time, they demanded that the government should stop harming the environment, damaging ecosystem of the grassland that has lasted for many years, and stop affecting the living conditions of the herders. The local police arrested 90 protesters. Their whereabouts are still unknown. The truck drivers were sentenced to capital punishment. To commemorate the martyr, Mongolians regard May 11th as the day of the grassland protection. In order to prevent the herdsmen from defending their rights, the local authorities even took the books on the grassland protection laws out of the bookstores. The herdsmen in Urad Middle Banner reported that Xinhua bookstore near the place they lived has been closed. There were original books on government policies, grassland protection laws, and other law books. The herders suspected that the government officials didn't want them to read those books. However, in some other places in southern Mongolia you could find those books. But in Urad's central banner you couldn't buy any of the books related to the grassland protection, as those books were considered to be weapons in the hands of herdsmen. After the Mergen incident, the communists went on with their inhumane policies towards the Mongolian herders. Han people coming to southern Mongolia became more aggressive. Nationalism was encouraged by the CCP, and new measures to assimilate the Mongolians took place at that time. Although the Mongolians in southern Mongolia were looking for help from the country of Mongolia, but the Mongolian state could not do much. Until the 2017 Mongolian presidential elections, when the candidate who had a stronger approach opposing China won. That fact slightly encouraged the Mongolians in southern Mongolia. But then the local government has increased its control measures over the region. Before the celebrations of the 70th anniversary of Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region establishment, the measures to suppress the protesters and herders have increased drastically. In addition, in order to maintain stability before the 90th National Congress of the CCP, the communist authorities strengthened their control over the WeChat groups. Mongolians felt only grief and desperation. Some pro-democracy activists were even willing to take the risk of requesting assistance from the Taiwanese NGOs that unfortunately didn't have enough knowledge about what has been going on in southern Mongolia. Look at this picture. We see 5 herders with banners in Mongolian saying, "Protect the Sonic grassland. Strongly oppose all actions damaging the grassland. Leave a piece of pure land for future generations. Money cannot solve the suffering when we have no water." The pollution levels in southern Mongolia are unimaginably terrifying. For many years, southern Mongolians have taken to the streets in protest of the land occupation and to protest the policies leading to terrible pollution. The Xing'an copper zinc smelter in West Ujimchin Banner, Inner Mongolia, has been polluting the environment and harming health for the herders. About 100 locals have been protesting before the government for 2 consecutive days since March 8, 2016. They demanded to solve the problem with terrible pollution, but the smelter is a state-owned enterprise, so that there was not much that herdsmen could do. Hulunbuir city is also known as Grassland Paradise. It is situated close to the Mozhegler River. The factories nearby have been polluting the river, causing fish die-offs. The river that used to have the best water in the whole world, as the locals say, is now extremely polluted due to the large number of chemical plants on the riverside. According to the CCP, the fish just froze to death. As locals said, the fish never froze to death in the past, when the temperatures could go as low as -60 degrees Celsius. And now they just agreed to go out and finish their lives together. Just look at those pictures. How terrible should the pollution in the area be? On August 14th, year 2020, there was a piece of news saying that the grassland herders in Inner Mongolia protested pollution caused by the pig farms. And it's not the first time these protests are happening. Mongolian herders were banned from grazing, but the local government attracted the enterprises from inland to build pig farms. The purpose was to promote the investments from the Chinese enterprises. 3 years ago, there were protests against Kofco Group, spelled like that. The company has been accused of throwing the dead pigs or pigs' dung out in the grassland. The stench was so terrible it spread miles around, causing headaches and vomiting, and let's not forget that the pig farms need huge amounts of water to maintain. And those incidents are just a tip of an iceberg. The CCP suppression of southern Mongolia began in the times of Cultural Revolution. You can find some similarities to Kuomintang's suppression of the Japanese-educated intellectuals in Taiwan. That happened right after the Second World War. After 1945, many intellectuals speaking fluent Japanese were said to be Japanese cooperators and puppet Manchurian Japanese traders. Communists have run multiple campaigns against them during the time of persecution of Mongolian self-determination movement. Eastern part of Inner Mongolia that received modern Japanese education. Even during the early years of the CCP rule, that part of Inner Mongolia had many young intellectuals. After the Cultural Revolution broke out, these young people were eliminated. Having Japanese education was their original sin, according to the History of Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region by Hao Weiming. About 27,900 Mongolians were killed by the CCP during the Cultural Revolution. In addition, some scholars said that in fact the number of the victims should be higher. 500,000 arrested and 100,000 killed, plus more than 300,000 people who died after being tortured. If you want to know more about Southern Mongolia during Cultural Revolution, I recommend you a book, Genocide on the Mongolian Steppe. First-hand accounts of genocide in Southern Mongolia during Chinese Cultural Revolution. The author is a Mongolian scholar based in Japan, Yang Haiyi. Former Mongolian president Tsaikya Elbekdorj, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, issued a video statement recently, urging the Chinese government to respect the rights of ethnic Mongolians to preserve their mother tongue, and calling on the Mongolians around the world to support Southern Mongolia. He strongly supports the preservation of Mongolian language. And Mongolians around the world should participate in action of solidarity no matter where they are. He emphasized that without the Mongolian language, the Mongolian nation will lose the ability to communicate. And losing the language is like losing your mind and hands. When we look back at the CCP's persecution of Tibet, East Turkestan, Hong Kong, and even mainlanders in the past, it can be said that the number of people persecuted is more than the population of a medium-sized country. Doesn't it make you all shocked? How could the world turn a blind eye on such a terrifying regime? It makes no sense to me. We all watched the superhero movies, read books about good and evil. We all know that evil should be punished and pay the price. Isn't this the right time to unite against it? Each of us can be a hero as long as you're willing to stand up against evil and stop appeasing it. It is our common responsibility. This is Stan, and I see you in the next one. 再会.